Okay, following this freeze frame is going to be 24 seconds of me showing you exactly the basic 3 steps on how to install the belt. Following that is a far more comprehensive 14-minute video in which I go into much greater detail. But a lot of people just want to see the basic steps right away. The order: unclip that mass airflow sensor, take these off, disconnect, unclip here, unscrew there, pull the whole box out, take that motor mount out, put on your belt. Pretty much that easy. Okay, I had a 2003 Saturn L-300 with the V6 engine. The belt went out. Now I've seen a couple videos on this topic, and boy, it's a lot of nonsense, and I just get right to the point. So I'm going to show you that I've now installed the belt. And the way this motor is designed is kind of silly in that you have to remove here the motor mount to access the belt. You can't just put it on and put it off. Okay, now that is a 15mm bolt, and that is your tensioner pulley. So when you turn clockwise to crank the pulley on, that makes that pulley have some travel this way. It loosens the belt and enables you to get things on. And you're gonna find that because this water pump has no lip on it, you're gonna want to make that the last thing you slip on as you're loosening the tension on the pulley. Getting it up and over the lip on a new belt, it is just too snug, and you're gonna find this barely fits, but it does fit. So the belt diagram, as you can see, it goes at the upper left around the tensioner pulley. That's the alternator below that. And then it goes up, and the back of the belt, not the ribbed side, touches the the water pump. Then it goes down and under the crank, and from there under the AC, up and over the power steering, and back around. So that's pretty easy. Now basically I'm just going to work this backwards. So I'm going to install the motor mount, which has 16mm head bolts. That is an unusual size for metric. It's almost a perfect equivalency to 5/8, but with a 6-point socket in particular, you can get away with using a 5/8 instead of a 16, but you know, we all try to do things the right way, hopefully. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Now before I do, I'm going to show you, it has 4 bolts. Okay, this one here is going to be in plain view, but it goes under the frame, so there's not a lot of room to work there. You're going to need to do that with a, you know, like a ratcheting box wrench. You have a tough time getting a socket in there. Okay, these two are very visible and very accessible, and this one's a little bit recessed, and when you're trying to take it off, you might not even see that it's there, and you'll take off these two and this one, and you won't understand why this doesn't come out. All right, and here, these 3 things correspond to these 3 here. You're gonna want to disassemble it. I saw another video where he didn't disassemble it. Boy, disassembling it made the thing come out much easier. And then these 3 go into the frame, and again, all of these are identical head bolts, 16mm. So I'm just going to go ahead and install that. You don't need to watch me do it. And just as a helpful hint, when you're trying to line this piece back up with where it bolts onto the motor, this far one down here, the one where you're going to need the wrench instead of the socket, that corresponds to that hole right under there, right there, behind the power steering pump. And then these 2 upper ones here, they correspond to those 2 holes there. and then that recessed one is in there. Let me just a quick helpful hint. When you put this piece back in, these two shafts go above the belt, okay? But the one down here for that recessed bolt, that actually goes under this portion of the belt. And you're gonna have to, it's tricky, manipulate your fingers in a way where you momentarily kind of pull up on the belt to get that shaft under it. As you can see, the belt goes sort of in between. It's not rocket science, but there is a little bit of a trick to it. And then this bolt down here, the one that requires the box, I strongly recommend that you have the bolt inside the piece like that. Don't try to mount the piece and then put the bolt in. I don't think you're going to have room for that. Now, not all of you are going to have this available to you, but it will help. I have the Earthquake, which is a Harbor Freight brand cordless impact wrench. It is unquestionably the best cordless electric tool that I have ever bought from Harbor Freight. I've had a lot of bad luck with their cordless stuff, but this Earthquake line is it's an incredible line. This thing puts out so much torque. You can get off heavy duty lug nuts. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. It's the best $260 or $270 I ever spent. Now, another Harbor Freight item is this flexible 3/8. See that? It's a flexible 3/8 extension. Very handy. And I have a 16mm socket there at the end of it with, of course, an adapter because this thing's 1/2 inch. That will make getting a couple of these screws on, excuse me, a couple of these bolts on, especially that one, these two, just a little bit quicker. If not, you'll be fine with standard hand ratcheting and sockets. Okay, I'm by myself filming here, so I'm just going to go ahead and film doing one of these just to show you how nice this is. Watch. Okay, well, normally with two hands you get to hold that, but as you can see, that does speed it up. Okay, so I got 1, 2, and sneaky one number 3. Those are bolted up real good. And again, there's the one that you need a wrench, because you can see there's just no room to get a socket in there. Now, I've got a really extensive set of tools here, ratcheting wrenches, but a 16mm is such an odd size that you're not going to find one in a standard set. You would have to get it individually. So once again, I remind you, you can get away with the 5/8. And by the way, in case I didn't state it earlier, and in case it's not patently obvious, when you take that motor mount off, you are going to have to put a jack under the oil pan, and definitely put a block of wood between the jack and the oil pan, because I hear they puncture rather easily, and well, that's the last thing you want. Okay, so I went ahead and tightened it with that 5/8 ratcheting box. But now that it's in, now there's more room. So with a 3/8 drive, not 1/2 inch, but a 3/8 drive, 16mm socket, and Harbor Freight makes this nice, long, very thin, low profile dual 3/8 and 1/4 drive ratchet. It's a great tool. I've actually got 2 of them. And now it does fit, as you can see. And because this has a nice long handle, even though you're on a 3/8 drive socket, you can get some pretty good torque on it, because you want that nice and tight. Okay, putting the 2-piece motor mount back together, that's obviously self-explanatory. So I'll just go ahead and do that. And you might be asking yourself, should you put these on first or these on first? And are you going to have trouble lining it up? I recommend, and I'm just guessing here because I've never done one of these before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on just a bit so that they're attached but not necessarily tight. Because I'm noticing that I think I need to jack the engine up, because there's plenty of room underneath here. You know, that's going to have to tighten, and that's quite a bit. That's like ½ an inch, maybe more. But yet this piece is already flush. So that means the motor needs to come up so that those pieces can do that. As you can see, I've jacked the motor up because now I've got the space here more than here. So I'm going to go ahead and line the holes up, because you always want to do that. You want to make sure that you've at least got a couple of hand tightened threads in the holes so that things line up, because it's frustrating to tighten, you know, a quarter of them or a half of them or most of them, and then realize you've got 1 or 2 or 3 that aren't lining up, and then you got to kind of take it all apart and start over again. Okay, so I've got all 3 of these hand tightened and all 3 of these hand tightened, and I'm just going to go ahead and crank it up. Anyway, I haven't shown you any of the actual tightening of nuts because of the whole fact that I don't have 3 hands, but this is quick, and I'm going to show you just how fantastic this tool is. So, boom, 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 so in less than 60 seconds I just did what would have taken 7-8 minutes, maybe more, to do by hand. Okay, the next thing I'm putting in is what is colloquially known as the air box, and unfortunately I just dropped a hose clamp. But here's the bottom part of the assembly. Of course, there's the top, and there's the air filter in between, and then this goes into there, and then the hose goes onto there with your mass airflow sensor. Mass airflow sensor side faces the firewall, and you're going to see that pin corresponds with that hole, and there's a little screw hole there for this mount here. Another video said there was a Torx bolt on, but I noticed it just had this 10mm over here. Okay, so you're going to want, this thing's a bit of a squeeze, it doesn't just drop in real easily, so you're going to want to get this side here under this surface before attempting to make that coupling and line up that pin with that guide. Okay, real quick, this is a Black & Decker cordless driver, and these are what are known as nut setters. They've got a little magnet in them. Don't need it here, but that's what I have. Makes things a little quicker. Okay, that's it. We're done. So just to recap the order, unclip that mass airflow sensor, take these off, disconnect, unclip here, unscrew there, pull the whole box out, take that motor mount out, put on your belt. Pretty much that easy.